Well, welcome back. Coni Meyers with the Kickbutt Leadership Facebook Live Conference. I'm so excited to be here and to be a part of this amazing group of people that I am so fortunate to know and care about. And this is my co-host.
I'm Kim White with the My Sexy Business team.
Kickbutt is when mindfulness meets vision, opportunity, and engagement. And the gentleman that we're having on now, he and I had a conversation about how sometimes when you use the word mindfulness, people's eyes roll or they think it's woo-woo or it's kooky or whatever, to phrase some friend of mine. Anyway, so...
well, let's reframe that a little bit. I was just saying that sometimes that brings up connotations of something different than what you two represent.
So I wanted to bring Michael on because he's an amazing man. He's done amazing things. He's have an incredible story. And he truly, of anybody that I know, probably understands mindfulness way more than most of us. So Michael Atman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your show. This is really exciting for me. And I'm here to kind of share some insights, I guess, into my experience around mindfulness and business. And yeah, I'm super keen to get into it.
Okay, well, before we get there, I'd like to add, because I ask this of every single person I interview, were you a leader as a child?
No. As a child, I was an introvert and brought up in a very emotionally repressed environment. And so, yeah, my natural tendency wasn't, well, okay, that's actually, let me reframe that. I wasn't a leadership on the outside, but on the inside, I was self-reliant, which is why I leaned more towards doing activities like martial arts and things like that. And I became really good at it. And I was really good at school as well. I wasn't a natural leader in that I had people around me that I was kind of leading, but within myself, I didn't need to fit in, if you know what I mean. I didn't need to fit in with other kids and other groups. I didn't need to be led, so I was self-reliant. So in that sense, there was a leader inside me. It just hadn't come out yet, and I was applying it to myself.
Well, we're definitely happy that it came out. So how did you get into work with mindfulness and meditation and all of that? Because for me, it was kind of a journey, and I know your story, and so how did you get into this line of thinking and work?
Yeah, so look, I got into mindfulness at a time when I was going through severe anxiety, panic attacks, and even insomnia. So it was a really bad time. I'd lost everything in my life. I was at rock bottom, and I had to find a way to cope with the incredible amount of stress and pressure and tension that I was under each and every day. It was impossible to go to sleep. I remember some nights just sitting in the corner of the room, just praying to go to sleep because I was so tired. And I was worried all the time about money, worried about food. I worried about how I was even going to put petrol in the car. And, there's just a series of events unfolded from there. And that was probably the hardest time. Well, not probably, that was the hardest time in my life. So, and I didn't understand why my mind was driving me crazy, but I recognized that it was all coming from my head. My head just wouldn't shut up. It was just literally driving me nuts. And I understood in that moment, why people went just completely bonkers in their lives. I really did understand that because it was close for me. I recognized I had a choice. I could either let this overwhelm me and take over, and like all the emotions that come with that, the fear, I could let that either, just completely destroy my life and turn to something like alcohol or drugs or even worse, suicidal thoughts. I never had them, but I could see how you could go down that path. And I was worried. I was worried for myself because I didn't know how to get out of this loop in my head and just in my life. It was all consuming for me. So a friend of mine actually said, listen, he could see how much trouble I was in. And he said, look, I'm doing a meditation course starting next week. And he said, it goes for 6 weeks. That's an hour a night, once a week. Would you come along with me? And God bless him, because that was just like, that was just like divine prominence coming my way. It was like a sign. And I was just looking for something. I went to the doctors and they gave me some medication at first, and I stopped that because I felt worse. To be honest, I felt worse. It just messed me up even more. So I just stopped that after a week. So I knew that wasn't going to work. I had to find another solution. And so I went to this meditation/mindfulness course. And on the very first night, I remember sitting down and this lady just guided us through this nice, beautiful, enchanting forest meditation. It was guided, and it went for an hour. And then at the end of that session, I had an inner peace that I hadn't experienced for my entire life, if I'm honest. It had never been like that for me. My entire body was relaxed. My mind was clear for the first time in a long time. Absolute clarity, just no thoughts. My body felt light, and I slept. I slept like a baby that night. I slept so deeply and so peacefully. And by the end of that 6-week course, I was anxiety free. And I say that in all sincerity. I had no anxiety anymore. So that was my introduction to mindfulness. And I, as somebody who's intellectually orientated, which I found out about myself later on, I needed to understand the mechanics of that. I really wanted to know how that worked. And if it could help me with that, my goodness, what else is it doing? What other benefits am I getting from this that I'm not even aware of? So that took me then on a journey around the world, studying from a whole bunch of mindfulness and meditation teachers. And it was, that's what got me on my journey of mindfulness.
Wow. So when you come from a very successful background, you've had a very successful business. When you are talking to people that are in business, and there's so much stress and there's so much anxiety, excuse me, that goes along with a lot of people in their businesses. What do you like to tell them? I mean, a lot of people say, well, I don't know how to meditate, or I can't shut my mind off for more than 2 minutes, or even a minute. So how do you help people when they first get started?
Yeah, so look, stress in business is another whole kind of ball game, really, because the pressures in the workplace are many and varied, but as it is in all areas of life. And what I say to people about that is mindfulness is as natural as breathing. It really is. If you can breathe, you can learn mindfulness. If you move, you can learn mindfulness. If you walk and talk, you can learn mindfulness. I think there's a big misconception around what it is. But I think the first thing I always say to people is, what kind of stress are you having? Because we kind of use this word stress, and it's like a blanket word. It kind of encompasses so many variables within that are really the triggers or the causes, if you want, of stress. Stress is a symptom that something's not right, or that you're taking on too much, or that you're under incredible pressure. But what kind of pressure? Is it mental? Is it physical? Is it emotional? You're not getting enough sleep. Are you worrying all the time? There's a whole bunch of factors that go into making up this umbrella called stress. Stress is just the result of choices that we make mentally, physically, and emotionally each and every day. So I first of all kind of get people to look at their triggers. What is triggering the stress for you? Where's it coming from? So once they identify that, we then look at, can we help within that environment or within that experience? Is there a way that you can take some of that stress away? And in business, that can be done through delegation, through speaking to your supervisor or your boss or whatever, and finding, is there ways that you can reduce your workload if it's a workload issue? So first of all, you identify what is the actual issue that's causing the stress. Now, having said that, stress is actually is good for us. It's when we have too much stress, it's called overstress. When we go into overstress, that's when the problems occur physically, mentally, emotionally for us. That's when we find that we need things like meditation, mindfulness, and anything that we can do to help reduce that stress within us. So stress is healthy. I've got to say that, because without any stress, most people probably wouldn't bother to do anything. Stress gives us pressure, and with pressure, we perform. So we need a certain amount of pressure to perform in our lives, even to get out of bed. The pressure of, I need to get up by 5 a.m. so that I can get to work by 7 a.m. There's pressure there. Without that pressure, imagine if you didn't have to rock up. There was no time you had to rock up at work. Turn up whenever you want. Work as short or long as you want. Well, There's no pressure there. We have no stress on us. So I want to get across that stress is not bad. It's actually necessary for us to perform and function at high, well, not just high levels, but at the levels, at any level at all, where we're pushing ourselves to do a little bit, just to keep up and to get things moving.
I've never heard it put that way, though. Like, you think of stress as a negative. It's always a negative. Yeah. And I'm going through my mind now and thinking of all the times that I wouldn't do something if it wasn't for a deadline. Like exactly. self-inflicted deadlines. But I think about that. That is amazing. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, like, it makes all kinds of sense that we have to have a little bit of stress in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, I liken it to a guitar. I don't know if you play guitar, I play guitar, but you got the strings on the guitar. Now, if the guitar strings are too loose, the sound is off. If the guitar strings are too tight, the sound is off. But when the guitar strings are tuned, then they are tuned properly, then they play the right note. We're exactly the same. We're like guitar strings. If we don't have enough stress, then we're too loose and relaxed, and that's when you end up with couch potatoes. I like that term. Couch potato is somebody that has no motivation in their life to want to do anything except press the remote and drink beers or whatever the case may be. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging couch potatoes. What I am saying is that it's not healthy for us. We know it's not. And then on the other side of the coin, there's the overachiever who's always in high adrenaline mode. Yes, I'll go and jump out the plane after lunch, and then I'll go and climb Mount Everest next week. Then I'll get on my bike and do 300,000 kilometers in the week. And we'll build this business to $20 million business in the next 2 years. And they're all about push, 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 push. Well, that's over-adrenalized. And so the string on the guitar is too tight, and it's not going to work. It's going to break down. It'll snap eventually. So too much stress, we break down. Too little stress, we don't do anything. So we got to find that sweet spot.
I'm thinking that, like, I'm a kindergarten princess, and I need pictures, and that's the perfect picture. Like, understand? No, really, I think that's amazing, because I've always thought of stress as a negative thing, period. Not that it was just over stress is what the problem is.
Right.
Yeah, but we've got to recognize the triggers in our body, and that's where when we're rushing through our lives, and the real reason we get in overstress is because we're ahead of ourselves. We're just not here. We're not present. We're not conscious. We're not with our body. We're ahead. The mind's always racing ahead on the to-do list. Okay, yeah, wow. I used to have to-do list 20, 30 items long. I limit that to 5 now, max per day, 5. And within that 5, there's one thing. If I get that one thing done, and it's always the hardest thing, the most important thing, the thing that's going to take me closer towards achieving my goals, the things that are important to me. So I have the one thing I need to get done each day. But within that, I have 5 tasks. And if I don't get those 5 done, it's okay, as long as I get that one done. So I've taken all that pressure off myself of having to get those 20, 30 tasks done every day. And just they're piling up, they're piling up, they're piling up. You're never going to get to it. That's stress. That's overstress, putting too much on yourself. So we rush around trying to get all this stuff done, and we're so busy where we're ahead of ourselves. And so what happens is our body's going through all this inner turmoil. We're having thoughts all the time. A lot of them are negative and, anxious and worried. Psychological research shows us that about 80% of our thoughts are negative in nature. 80% carry a negative or limiting energy around them, based on our thoughts of, I've got too much to do. I can't do it. It's all too hard. Life's just so hard. I've got to take the kids to school. I've got to get the dinner done. Rush, 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 rush. And it's all putting pressure on our body. So those thoughts become emotions, but we don't slow down enough to experience those emotions. So those emotions now get pushed down. And emotional energy is 10 times stronger than thought energy. Now we've got all this emotions creating toxic chemicals in our body, like cortisol and adrenaline. It's flooding our body, and our body now is becoming toxic, but we're not slowing down or dealing with that. And so it starts to get stored in the body. And that's when the problems of long-term stress start to occur. Things like arthritis, things like heart problems, things like blood pressure issues, all those kind of things, not sleeping, that all starts to happen because now we have so much tension stored in our body.
Wow, that's huge.
I'm just like,
a great way of describing it to somebody that in a simple term. So if you're a leader, how do you get it down to 5 things? I think that's probably going to be the question everybody's going to ask. Well, how do I get my to-do list down to 5 things?
Yeah, so it would depend on individual circumstances. You got to get real with yourself. You got to look at your list of things and saying, do I really need to? Are all these things important? You know, a lot of things are urgent. I'm not saying, you know, urgent things happen within those 5 things. Sure, there's a bunch of urgent stuff that pops up that has to be taken care of. How you get those, or how I got those long list of tasks. And look, I've got a 7-figure business, so I understand, and I have 120 staff. So I understand the pressures of running a big business. Well, comparative, I guess for me it's big. but anyway, so to get that for me down to 5 things, I've had to learn to become a really good delegator. So I now have a personal assistant in the Philippines who, God bless her, she does 90% of my workload. So that list of other things, she does those now. And it doesn't cost me a lot of money. It's you know, but the time that it saves me and what I've been able to do with that time that I've gotten back, 90%. So you think about that. If I work an 8-hour day, I now have 7 hours that I get to work in my business, on my business, not in my business. Yeah. Yes, and so that's allowed me to grow another whole business on the side because of the time that I freed up doing and applying the 5 things. Now, the way I got my list down to 5 things, I just got real with myself. I thought, what's the one thing I want to achieve by the end of the year? So I give myself a yearly goal. What's the one thing? Okay, let's say I want to increase my business revenue by 20%. All right, so I put a number on that. So that's the overriding thing. And then I just break that down. And I go, well, what do I need to do to achieve that? Well, you know, we need to do this many sales. And, you know, you just break that down to what you need to do to achieve that. And within that, there's always going to be, you know, there'll be sales and marketing. There'll be, you know, hiring good people to get out there and help you grow your business. There'll be doing the right marketing. So sales, marketing, and just making sure that your systems are working effectively. And for me, it was I just had to get real and cross off those things that weren't important. Honestly, it's really that simple. You know, is that going to help my business to grow? Is that going to help my team to run better? Is that going to help me to achieve that one thing that I want to achieve in my business over the next 12 months? It's really that simple. You have to prioritize, but in a way like you've never done before. You know, and those things that you don't need to do, delegate if you can, as soon as you can. There's a book out there called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Read it. He kind of explains to you that if you're not outsourcing those tasks that are honestly not that are costing you more than it's costing you to pay for them, then, you know, what are you doing? Because we don't want our businesses to become a job.
No, absolutely not.
Can I be you when I grow up?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Well, one of the other things that we talked about, and this plays a big role in mindfulness thinking, and especially mindful leadership thinking, is whether we're coming from a place of happiness towards success, or whether we're coming from trying to strive for success to make us happy. And it sounds to me like the first part of your life, you kind of were in the if I'm I'm going to work really, really hard and I'll be successful and then I'll be happy. And now you've turned that around. Is that correct?
Yeah. So up until the time when I started meditating, I thought happiness came from my job. It came from my relationship. It came from relationships. It came from the work that I did. It came from, you know, going on holidays. It came from having a nice car. I never really thought much about happiness, honestly, because it was more I was in the world and living, you know, and enjoying what I was doing in the world. I had tons of money. I had a really good career, and I was making a lot of money. And I was traveling. So from the outside, if you looked at it from a worldly perspective, I had all the trimmings of what people should be happy about in their lives. And yet underneath that, I was drinking like a fish. So I would say I was an alcoholic at the same time. So I was drinking the equivalent of 3 or 4 bottles of spirit a week. And, you know, and funnily enough, I was also going to the gym every day for about an hour. So, you know, I that was my way of justifying I'm not an alcoholic because I'm sweating it out. So, but yeah, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. I was burning away on the inside because I was disillusioned. I had all this energy, and I didn't know then that I was an entrepreneur. I had no clue. In my mind, I was a worker, and I wasn't very skilled. I didn't do. I did 1 year of college, left because I got bored, but I never really had any academic background. I didn't have any particular skill set. So I was kind of wandering from one job to another till I landed in this, executive role, and I was traveling the world for 7 years. So that was interesting. And for me, happiness, I wasn't happy. Even though I had all those things, I recognized I wasn't happy. And I knew it because I was really drinking and living this lifestyle that although a lot of people would die for that, I was completely unfulfilled. So, yeah. And it wasn't until I lost it all that I realized, wow, I don't even know what happiness is. I just don't. And now I was in fear all the time. So I had to find out what happiness really meant. That was the key. I had to then go on this search of what is true happiness, because I'd never been happy. I did 28 careers in a 10-year period. So, I had 28 different careers in a 10-year period, and 7 of those was in one of them. So it goes to show you, I was looking for something, but I was looking in the wrong place. I was looking in a job. I was even business won't do it for you. I was looking, for happiness. The business that I do now has evolved out of my happiness and joy for who I am. What I do now, it's not a job for me. It's not even a business. It's just part of who I am. And so I had to learn how to be happy, but how to be happy with nothing. That's where it started. It wasn't until I had nothing that I had to find happiness.
Well, there's I don't know if you've read any of Sean Akers' books, but he wrote the Happiness Advantage as well as Before Happiness. And he talks about exactly that, the fact that we think if we work a little harder that we'll be successful and then we're going to be happy. And the truth is that if you think about this, anytime in your life that something has really been good, you've come from a point of joy, or that's part of you, rather than trying to make it something. Yeah. It's already inside of you. And through his research, he went to Harvard School, and then he became a professor there, started doing research on happiness. And he found that if we come from a place of happiness, we're 31% more productive. And we are also, if we're in sales, we're going to produce 37% more in sales. So what you're saying is proof of that, because your business is very successful, but you're coming from a place of happiness. You don't have the stress that you would have. I mean, that's a total way of looking at exactly what he talks about.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. I love that he did all that research. Look, happiness has been something that I've dove into quite deeply. And I've also looked at all the scientific research around it. There is a lot of research out there around happiness, funnily enough. And, there's a difference between having fun, having pleasure, and happiness itself. And I think what people need to really figure out for themselves, rather than even being told by somebody else, how we define anything is how it is for us. So I'm just going to say that again. How we define something is how it is for us, because the only thing that's going on in our lives is our beliefs about it. So I looked at all the ideas around happiness, and then it all made sense, but I still wasn't connecting and experiencing that for myself until I had the understanding and the awareness come through meditation that happiness for me now is simply peace of mind. And that's where mindfulness comes in. When we're not stuck in our head, it's impossible to be happy when you're in your head and you're thinking, because the mind has positive and negative aspects to it. So for every joyful thought we have, oh my goodness, I've got this coming. I'm going to go and do this tomorrow. Yay! All excited. And then that doesn't happen tomorrow. We plummet. So our happy thoughts now become disillusioned, upset, unhappy thoughts. That's not happiness, that's thoughts. So if we can think happy thoughts, we can also think unhappy thoughts, and because they're both part of the same construct of the mind. But here's the thing, and here's what all the research I've done has shown me, and also science is also leading this way as well. When we're not thinking, we're at peace, we're just completely quiet and at peace inside ourselves, automatically happiness is there. So happiness is not something for me now I need to strive for. Happiness is something that I always have. It's always here. It's just that I get distracted from it. Happiness being peace of mind. I get distracted from peace of mind, and therefore now happiness is far away. And it's not until I'm not distracted anymore and I'm not thinking about life that I just simply come back to my body and I relax. And in that relaxation and letting go of my thoughts and just being at peace, happiness is there. All of a sudden, happiness is there. It's there. It's always there.
I think that's a really, really, really good point, because a lot of times we think we have to work on happiness.
Exactly.
And my guess is that if you were to, in some dictionary somewhere, probably the definition of happiness is exactly what you said, peace of mind, where we are who we are, and we're happy being in the present moment. We're not people that are in positions of leadership and they want to help others move forward and become good leaders as well. Because if you have somebody that's unhappy, that's being driven towards success rather than coming from a point of happiness, then the team that they're supporting is also going to pick up on that, because our energies, other people absorb.
Yeah, and you said something a moment ago about working on happiness. So even when you work on happiness, there's a stress underneath that. So when we work on something, there's stress around it, and when we're in our heads, we're creating anxiety. Whatever we're thinking about, if we're not having positive thoughts around it, then there's an element of anxiety attached or concern, attached to those thoughts. And for me, what I do with my team members to help with their happiness, knowing that for happiness really just means that they're not focused on negativity, and they're not caught up in gossip, and they're not caught up in drama, and they're not caught up in all the sorts of things that can really rip a business apart from the inside out, which is negative thinking and behaviors that are kind of like unprofessional and toxic to the environment, to the culture. I foster a culture of empowerment within the business. And so that I give people so much leeway to figure things out for themselves and learn how to be the best person they can be within the business. Oh, are we still there?
Can you hear us?
Oh, there. Can you hear us now? Uh-oh.
Michael.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It dropped out. Yeah. So did I answer that question then?
Well, I think you might have for everyone else, but we didn't hear it all because ours dropped us. So you were talking about the striving of being happy.
Yeah. So one of the things that I help with the team members in my business is I help them to fulfill their values, to make sure that their values are met. And so I make sure that I understand what their values are. Now, a lot of people in business don't do this with themselves or their team members. And what a value is, it's an emotional need that we have to feel happy and fulfilled with our lives. Now, I use the word happy, but when we meet our emotional needs, such as spending time with our family, or such as taking care of our health, or such as going on holidays, these are all emotional needs that we have. We're human beings after all, and when we meet those needs, then we relax and we're at peace. That's what, and so we feel like we've achieved what we really need in our life. And it's, for most people these days, it's not about their goals and the big things they're going to get at the end of what they're doing in their career or in their job or in their business. It's not about those things. For most people now, it's about how they feel along the way and their experience of life and themselves as they're journeying through their life in business or in work. It doesn't really matter, in relationships. So I teach my team members how to be fulfilled from the inside out, and that gives them peace of mind. They feel like they're empowered. They feel energized, and they sleep better. they are healthier, they treat other people with more respect, they have more compassion. But I also teach them the tools of mindfulness so that they can quickly bounce back and have more resilience to those stressful events, or, and let's face it, people can be stressful, or relationships that are going on, not just in the workplace, but in their lives. So I teach them the skills of how they can manage that within themselves so that they're not taking on board that extra stress, that overstress, and they're more relaxed as they go through the day. And that's, to me, the power of mindfulness. Is it's a really powerful tool to be A, emotionally resilient and mentally resilient, and B, to have a calmer demeanor, because now you're not caught up in the whirlwind of the busy mind all the time.
Absolutely. Actually, there's a study that was done in 2011 that they actually took 57 top level executives from different sectors of business. That was done here in the United States. I don't know if you heard about it in Australia or not, but they took these and they put them through 8 weeks of mindfulness training. And then they had them continue for another. Well, they took half the team and they didn't do the mindfulness. The other half did the mindfulness training. And they had them do it for another 12 weeks after that. Then they came back and they did more. They did all the same research they had done beforehand. They did brain waves. They did psychological testing. And what they discovered was that there was actually a over 90% increase in both resilience as well as collaboration by doing these mindfulness techniques and practices. And there was also over an 80% increase in the ability to be able to handle complex problems and situations. And then there was another, I think it was out of Canada. They took a whole bunch of these studies and put them together. And they actually showed where the actual brain grew in size by doing these practices. So I think for people out there that are not sure about what this is really all about, and that need the analytics out there, that need the scientific proof, just go online. There's lots of proof out there that shows how important this is, whether you're a leader of your own life or whether you're a leader of a team or a leader of a big corporation. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and do you want me to give a couple of simple mindfulness tools that people can use in their business?
That'd be great.
Yeah, so one of the simple things that you can do to be more mindful in your workplace or when you're working is, well, I'll just step back a bit. So the first thing is mindfulness is about stepping back from the busy mind. And really what that means is it's about becoming more present and being physically present, really, in your body. And just by having that thought that you're going to stop for a moment and just be present and see what's going on. And, most of the time people get to the point where they're already in this stressful moment and, they're freaking out about something, or they're having an anxiety attack, or, they're just feeling tremendously pressured and they feel like they're going to explode. They're overwhelmed. That's kind of like you're at this intense place, but you don't need to get there. What you can do, and I really highly recommend people try this, is every 90 minutes, set a timer on your phone if you need to, but every 90 minutes, take it at least 2 or 3 minutes to be mindful of what's going on for you. Just check in. So in other words, if I'm sitting at my desk, I do this every hour, but I'm kind of doing it automatically now. It's more for me an internal thing that I'm doing in any case. But every 90 minutes, you can just sit there and just for a moment, just tune into the body. The body knows what's going on. It'll tell you. Just tune in. And it's called scanning. It's a really simple technique called body scan. And you just, if you need to, close your eyes. You actually don't need to, but you can. Close your eyes and just tune in with your body and just scan the body from the feet, tip of your feet, right down to the top of your head. By scanning, I mean just feel through it with your mind. Just go through with your mind. Check in with your body and notice anywhere on your body where there's tension being held. So that's step one. You're not looking to change anything. This is just an exercise in awareness. And that's what mindfulness is, by the way. It's simply being aware of the present moment with an attitude of non-judgment. So you just go through and scan your body. Notice where there's tension. Now, let's say you've got tension in your shoulders. Great. You've noticed that. You haven't judged it. You've just noticed it. Now, what you can do, once you've done that, you've found that tension, you can do one of two things. You can either just stay focused on that, place your attention on that tension, and funnily enough, it'll literally dissolve itself. If you do that, if you just bring your mind to it and place that focus, that attention of the mind completely on that stressful place, and you don't do anything about it except just notice it, funnily enough, it starts to dissolve, it starts to decrease. And that does happen. So step one is do that. Step two is there's also another way you can use mindfulness, is you can actually tense those muscles. So you can tense your shoulders, like tighten them for 10 seconds and then relax and just let it go. Now what you've done is you've gone in consciously with intent, you've tightened the tight muscles, which might sound contradictory, but when you tense something that's tense, you're actually squeezing, pushing energy from a scientific perspective. You're heating it up from the inside and you're creating more tension, which then causes that tension to start to heat up and to move because you're pushing the energy, you're pushing that toxic energy out of those muscles. So by squeezing them, you're actually forcing, in a way, you're pushing that energy, and then when you let it go and relax, you've actually got rid of, say, 50% of the tension, if not all of it in some cases.
That is, thank you. Those are incredible exercises that people can do to really step into mindfulness, actually, and be aware. Well, we are out of time, as always, Michael. And I really, really appreciate you coming on. Every time I talk to you, I want to talk to you for another half hour. So I appreciate you coming on and being a part of my Kickbutt Leadership Conference. We'll be talking to you soon. This is the launch of my Kickbutt Leadership Master Course online, and it's available at kickbuttleadership.com. There's two ways to enter. If you are a California Association of Realtors member, you can go in one way. If you're not, or a non-realtor, you can go in another way. And we're offering a special offer for the next 7 days. It's only $249. So I appreciate, Michael, you explaining all this too. You explained it so eloquently. So thank you so much. And I am Coni Meyers with Kickbutt Leadership, and my co-host.
I'm Kim White with the My Sexy Business team.
And we'll be back for a wrap up of the day.